What's up, everybody? Happy Thursday to you. It's been a couple of days since I did a video, and I've been really busy trying to life and work and build my business. I caught the that Congress is contemplating, or they have. I'm not sure. It looks like people are still kind of talking about it now, but the Congress is looking to pass a bill called the Anti Semitic Awareness Bill, which really allows the US government to pretty much operate like Europe, where if you say anything against the state of Israel, if you have any criticism of their government, essentially you could be prosecuted. Obviously, this is a flagrant attack on the First Amendment. It's a flagrant attack on basic human rights, right? When you start creating laws that say that you are not allowed to criticize only one specific country, right, while you can criticize every other country, including your own, obviously people are going to find that problematic, and it is problematic because number one, everybody has their opinions about the state of Israel in some little way. There's some people who don't care about Israel. We don't care if they exist or not. It's none of our business. It's their business. It's their nation. Do your thing in your nation. Okay? It has nothing to do with Americans in a lot of respects. And people say, well, that's isolationist. Well, how is it isolationist? If we are saying that if your friend is doing something that you don't agree with, right, and you remove yourself from that friend, to demonstrate that you don't rock with this thing that they're doing, that's not isolationist. That's taking a stance against something that you don't agree with, even if it's your friend, right? And I think the way that these conversations are going, where people are just trying to convince Americans that we have to support our allies in anything that they do, whether it comes off as genocidal or not, they're basically forcing people by leveraging the law, the legal system, to stop people from voicing opinions. I don't think that it's Americans' job to make Israel feel better about anything that they are doing in their region, right? But obviously, human beings, right, have an issue when we see mass casualties of civilians in front of our faces. And I think that, we're watching unarmed people being starved and basically bombed. And I wouldn't even say they're being bombed into submission, right? The Palestinians have loyalty to their land. They've been there. They do not want to leave their land. And this is really sad because Israel knows that that is their position. And as opposed to wanting to create a resolution, right, they're saying, well, if you don't get off this land, we're going to bomb you off of this land. And a lot of people in the international community have a problem with that. And a lot of people are saying that we should defend Israel because they're God's chosen people and Israel is a holy land. And if you read the Bible, that's just not true. If you read the entire Bible, you will understand that God chose a nation to be an example of all the other nations, and he gave them a land, or he granted them a land with conditions. And I think that's where a lot of people really miss is, what did God tell Moses? What did he say to Moses? What was reiterated after Moses, right? That if you do not keep the covenants, if you do not be that example of the nation, that you could be removed from this land. And that this is what happened to the ancient Israelites, right? They went into the land of Canaan conquering, no problem. We knew that the ancient Israelites were at least obedient or in covenant with their God when they entered the land, because they were subduing all of the nations that they were conquering. And a lot of those battles were very passive, like the walls of Jericho went down with trumpets. They marched for 7 days, and by the seventh day, the walls of Jericho were down. So they had the favor of their God entering into the land. But the problem with the ancient Israelites is that they did not stay the course. They were supposed to rid the land of all of the wicked Canaanite nations, because a lot of them were Baal, Moloch worshipers. They were participating in spiritistic practices that were absolutely unclean and defiled, and they added defilement to the land. So because Israel did not do that, and instead they allowed those nations to stay, they intermingled with those nations, they were taking wives from these nations, and after a while, they fell into the same practices as the ancient Canaanite nations. So Baal and Moloch worship, it was huge among the ancient Israelites, because they wanted to basically play at the table of their God and also play at the table of these pagan demonic gods as well. And as a result of those disgusting practices, they fell out of covenant with their God. And we knew at what point the ancient Israelites lost the hedge of their God, when other nations were able to conquer them and subdue them. Okay, so the Assyrians came in first and took out the northern kingdom of Israel. And then the Babylonians came in with the Assyrians' help and finished the job. That is how Israel ended up in exile in Babylon, right? They lost the protection of their God because they were out of covenant. They were worshiping other gods. So God was like, okay, you're going to worship these other gods. Let's see if they save you from the Assyrians and the Babylonians who are coveting to move on you. And obviously, their foreign gods did not do that. Fast forward, a lot of people are like, well, God said he's going to call all of his people back home. Well, stop conflating prophecies, right? Because Ezekiel's prophecy has already been fulfilled. It was fulfilled when Cyrus was commissioned that the Jews return to their homeland. That happened already, right? He was the one, Persia was the one who created who not only got them back home, but Cyrus was used to build help fund the second temple. The second temple was a lot of that was funded by the tax breaks of the Persians, right? And it's interesting because when they were called back home, a lot of the ancient Israelites did not go back to the land. They stayed in Babylon. A lot of them, many of them. All right. The ones that did go back home, they resettled in the land, but then by the time that the Persian Empire had ended and the Greek Empire had gained its influence, they were knee deep in paganism again, because the allure of the Greek culture was hard for them to resist. Right? That's where you have the war of the Maccabees, because they did have ideological differences in the ancient nations. Some of them were more, we're going to stay with the laws of Moses, we're going to be Torah. Others were knee deep in Talmudic paganism, idealism, fusing Satanism with the laws of Moses. Right? They wanted to claim to be a people that they weren't living up to being. So by the time the Romans were in power, there was a lot of things happening in Jerusalem, a lot of things happening in Israel that was disgusting. And even the pagan Romans who had converted to the Abrahamic faith, right? They were like, okay, y'all supposed to be God's people and y'all acting like this, right? And Jesus prophesied that the second temple would be destroyed, and it was. And the Romans came in and did that. And again, if you look at the secular accounts, the Romans had zero intentions of burning down the Second Temple. Titus, I believe, was the general of the Roman army. He specifically told them not to touch the Second Temple, right? It was their God who wanted it destroyed. And that's why you had that rogue soldier that threw the flame into the Second Temple. It wasn't their intention to do that. But that land, that temple, was so defiled with paganism that it needed to be destroyed. And when the Romans got rid of, when they subdued Israel and the war Jerusalem and Rome, right? Hadrian, the Roman emperor, he changed the name, the Judah, because that's really what it was. Israel had two kingdoms, right? The kingdom of Israel was comprised of two tribes, right? Judah and Israel, right? When the Romans subdued, those tribes, Hadrian renamed that region. That is why in every single older Bible, you will not see Israel. You will only see Palestina or Palestine, because that is what they renamed that region. And, when you're talking about, so when God told them that, if you don't follow my covenants, your covenants, you're going to be removed from the land, that came into pass, so that they had their second call. I mean, they had their second chance to go back into the region after Babylon and do right by their covenants, and they did not do that. So when people want to argue, that, Israel has a right to exist, I argue on what basis? If you want to say that they have a right to exist because the states and all the governments around the world has decided that this is going to be Israel and whatever, fine, but don't make it a biblical basis. That's all I'm telling people, is don't make Israel's right to exist based on the Bible, because that is not true. If you read and understand the Bible, you understand why Israelis, or whoever those people are, they don't have a right to that land. Biblically, they don't have a right to that land. Actually, there was no other inheritor of the land when God told Moses, you will be removed. He didn't say you're going to be removed and we're going to bring in Gentiles, or we're going to bring in this person. No, that land was going to be desolate. And whatever nomadic people settled in that land after they were removed, obviously there was no further direction from God about what would happen to the land if Israel broke their covenants and was removed. So when you're talking about who has the right to that region, right? If it was a desolate land and the landlord who gave the land to the people originally had them removed from the land by force, he brought his quarter-pointed Romans, Babylonians, and Assyrians to remove them from the land and exile them, right? That already happened. It already happened. So that tells you that what we are seeing today is nothing less of a mockery of the scriptures. It's a mockery of the scriptures, and both Jews and Christians are culpable for this. They are. And they're going to have to deal with their judgment about mocking the scriptures as well. Now, the nations have created or rose up the nation of Israel again, right? So we have this mockery of the Bible prophecies. The outcome is going to be the same. Matter of fact, it's probably going to be worse, because it's man-made mockery of the scriptures. And I don't think a lot of Christians, these governments are definitely, we don't give them credit for understanding prophecies, but Christians and even your Torah Jews, you guys know. You guys, and I wouldn't even say the Torah Jews, because they literally will stop at Deuteronomy. So they don't really want to see how their history played out. But Christians ought to be ashamed of themselves for even enabling this lie for so long. It's a lie. It's a huge lie. It's a lie. It's a big lie. And no shade on people who want to identify as Jews or participate in the religion of Judaism. But you know that it's a lie. You know that it's a lie. That's why they work so hard to maintain this lie. That's why, from what I hear, people in Israel can't take DNA tests. You have to have some weird legal strong basis for why a person in Israel has to take a DNA test. And there's definitely a reason why. Because if you run a so-called Israelis DNA against a Palestinian, you're going to know that the Palestinian is more Semitic than a lot of these Eurasian people who are saying that they are Jews. They are Eurasian people. That is who currently occupies Israel. Those are not Middle Eastern. My neighbor is a real Jew. I know my neighbor is a real Jew because his mother is actually Middle Eastern. I have zero doubt in my mind that that guy is Jewish. But some of these other people, you know, and then they want to create laws. They want to create laws to try to get people to not talk about reality, right? To get people not to want to talk about the realities, right? So they're infringing on the First Amendment. And I knew this was going to happen where eventually, how these conversations were unfolding, that eventually the Bible was going to be deemed anti-Semitic. And if you look at this bill that Congress is entertaining, right, it makes the Bible anti-Semitic. So you guys keep your prayers up. If you are a person of faith, if you follow the Abrahamic faith, keep your prayers up because, you know, the devil is busy. And, you know, again, when you start going into these global idealisms of you can't criticize this particular group of people, it's not because they're God's chosen people. They're not God's chosen people. That's why we have new covenants. They broke their covenant with their God, and God even told them, if they break their covenants, right, I'm going to build a mightier nation with the Gentiles among the nations, right? And I think really that's what some of these people are trying to fight against is the reality that their people lost their spot as God's chosen people because they chose to be like the people of the nations. So as opposed to being an example to the people of the nations, they chose to be like them, the ancient people. And as a result, they received the same consequences as the nations. So now it's up to the individual to be God's people, not a group or designated nation or birthright bloodline. It's up to us as individuals, Jew and Gentile, to understand what the Abrahamic faith and the text from the prophets are saying and live by those standards, right? There's no color to God's people. There is no nation to God's people because God's people under the new covenant come from all of the nations. So, you know, I'm sorry to all the people who think that, you know, they're Jews and they are still God's chosen people. The ancient text does not support your theory and your supremacy. And I think you need to let go. And some of you need to just go ahead and repent and understand where your ancestors went wrong. And stop trying to be something that you're not. So anyways, you guys, that's my 2 cents. I don't know if I'm going to lose my job or lose my livelihood saying this, but this is cold facts. And we need to stop letting people believe that they have supremacy that they don't have, and even history doesn't support it. So anyways, you guys have a wonderful day, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye.